Greetings, Richard Fulmer here, and welcome to episode 104 of Richard's Rock Rambles. So today we're going to chat about a guy who's been around for a while. He's now well into his 70s, and most of you who watch this channel, you should know this guy. Was in a famous band for many years, about 10 albums, probably that many years. I'm talking about Ozzy Osbourne, of course, the lead frontman for Black Sabbath, right up until the album Never Say Die. And then he was given the heave-ho. I think it was actually Bill Ward that was given that unpleasant job of telling him that he was on his way. It was kind of a pot calling the kettle black. I mean, all those guys were doing serious drugs at the time. Sabbath was on a downward trajectory, but I think Ozzy was just doing a little bit more than anybody else, although Bill Ward is pretty much an alcoholic at that stage. And I don't think Ozzy was too far behind. It was just too much, the drugs and what have you. So they needed a change, and he was told to leave the band. So he was high and dry, and he had to get his career back on track. Hooked up with Sharon. She became Mrs. Osbourne eventually, and she pretty much got him out of his slump. And he released 2 albums. The first one called Blizzard of Oz, where he had some famous guys in the band. He had Lee Kerslake, the drummer for Uriah Heep, for a very long time. And he had Bob Daisley on bass. And Bob Daisley was with Rainbow. He was also in a band, I think, called Widowmaker, right all the way back. Plus, his trump card was a guy by the name of Randy Rhoads. Unbelievable guitarist. I mean, this guy was like the second coming almost. Very much the same impact like a guy, Eddie Van Halen kind of style. Amazing chops. Very unique style. Lots of classical runs in his playing. Very quiet guy. Very reserved. I think he was teaching guitar at the time that he joined Ozzy's band. Sadly, he would only do 2 albums for Ozzy, and then he would die in a plane crash at a very young age. A great loss to the music world and a great loss to Ozzy. I don't think he ever really got over that. So the 2 albums that he released were Blizzard of Oz, the first one, and the one we're going to chat about today called Diary of a Madman. Excellent albums. For me, the top 2 solo Ozzy albums. There would be one that came a lot later with Zakk Wylde on guitar called No More Tears. And for me, that one is probably the last really good Ozzy album. My opinion, of course, you guys might differ. Any comments down below will be fantastic. So this was the debut album, Ozzy Osbourne's Blizzard of Oz, featuring Lee Kerslake and Bob Daisley, Randy Rhoads, and Ozzy Osbourne obviously himself doing the vocals. And if I'm not mistaken, Don Airey was on here on keyboards. He was also on Diary of a Madman, although he wasn't credited on the album. So you had some great tracks in here. I Don't Know, Crazy Train, Goodbye to Romance, D, which was that instrumental piece from Randy Rhoads showing his chops. Mr. Crowley, probably the best track on the album. Amazing guitar solos. No Bone Movies, that kind of joke song. Revelation, Mother Earth, and Steal Away the Night. A strong debut. I must say, if you've been kicked out of a name band like Sabbath, everybody knows you for that. You got to basically start from scratch. Started, the whole career all over again. And he made a really great comeback with this. Although for me, the follow-up, Diary of a Madman, was just that bit stronger. So, it was recorded between February and March 1981 at Ridge Farm Studios in England and released on the 7th of November 1981 on the Jet label. I think he released a few after that. The live album as well was also on that label. Produced by Max Norman, Ozzy Osbourne, and Randy Rhoads. Those are the 3 guys involved in the production. So in the band, and this is where it starts to get a little interesting, you had Ozzy Osbourne on lead and backing vocals, Randy Rhoads on guitar, Bob Daisley on bass, who did most of the songwriting, by the way, although he didn't get credit for that either. Great songwriter. And Lee Kerslake on drums and percussion, and as I said, Don Airey on keyboards, but not credited. So he played all those sort of eerie bits on the album. So eventually, when this album was reissued in 2002, the original bass and drum parts were taken out. because at that stage there were court proceedings and what have you as regards cash that didn't come their way. And I'm talking about Bob Daisley and Lee Kerslake. They weren't happy with certain things. They weren't getting their due. They weren't credited, etc., etc. Long story. We can go on for days about that. So their two parts were replaced, taken off the album as if they never existed on the album by Robert Trujillo, the bassist who now plays for Metallica. He also played for Ozzy for a short time. So his bass parts are on there, as well as Mike Borden on drums, who normally used to play for Faith No More. So to me, that was just wrong. I mean, how can you take out Lee Kerslake's drum part and Bob, the original guys in the band, who had such a lot to do with the songwriting, and they were amazing musicians. Lee Kerslake, one of the best drummers ever. So they were removed. And I'm not too sure if this was Ozzy's idea or if it was management's idea. And you know who I'm talking about when I talk about Ozzy Osbourne's management. So yeah, I'm not sure what happened there. But then eventually, when the 30th anniversary rolled around for this album, as well as Blizzard of Oz, because I think their parts were taken out of both albums, they were reinstated, which to me made sense. And you know, Lee Kerslake passed away, I think, last year. And only right before his death did he get his due. Did he get some money that was owed to him? And I think he also got the gold album or the platinum album, whatever. It took that long for the man to get recognized and get his, get his credit, which was also not great. I mean, he'd been suffering with illness for so many years. A lovely guy, very down to earth. Both him and Bob Daisley. There's actually a Bob Daisley book that came out recently where he tells the whole story. Yeah, it's like a soap opera. But anyway, that's rock and roll for you. So yeah, the 2011 reissue also includes live recordings with Rudy Sarzo on bass and Tommy Aldridge on drums. Now, they were the guys who would eventually join permanently once Kerslake and Daisley were out of the band. So Aldridge and Rudy Sarzo, who used to be with Quiet Riot, they would go on the road with Ozzy. And they would stick around, I think, for Bark at the Moon and The Ultimate Sin. Or no, I think The Ultimate Sin was a different lineup as well. You know, Ozzy, like many people it's my band, I'll change people when and, how I like. So that was the reissues. The album went 3 times platinum in the States. Not too shabby. So there we go. Unfortunately, this is that very small cover. You can see Ozzy doing his crazy thing there. Sorry for the glare. This is one of the reissues. This is actually the reissue which doesn't have Lee Kerslake and Bob Daisley's bass parts. I think I must get the 30th anniversary, the proper. I used to have it on vinyl many years ago, but things get lost in the mists of time. And there's Ozzy with his jacket on with the tassels, which I think he still had when he was with Black Sabbath. See if there's anything else I can show you. There we go. That's what the original cover looked like. It's a better picture of it. Ozzy doing his insane asylum picture there with, I'm not too sure who the little boy is in the picture there. Might be no, I don't think it's his son Jack. I'm not too sure who that was. So there you get all the lyrics, which are really cool. Like I said, Bob Daisley did most of the songwriting. And there's the late Randy Rhoads with Ozzy. What a great picture. Man was such an incredible guitarist. So as you can see there, that's Tommy Aldridge on drums, and there's Rudy Sarzo at the back. But they weren't on the original album. It was Bob Daisley and Lee Kerslake, but because of all the issues, they were taken out. So these guys' picture landed up on this reissue. Very strange. But anyway, there's Randy Rhoads and Ozzy doing his thing with those strange outfits he used to wear back then. That's about it. So the all-important tracks on the album. Let me just have a swig of my libation. Diary of a Madman. Okay, that was the last track on here. I must get this right. It's one of these things that's got to go round and round and round. So the first track is Over the Mountain, which comes in with this amazing drum, originally from Lee Kerslake, a drum intro, quite a heavy track. And Randy Rhoads just blows this album wide open. I mean, he was such a revelation on this album. As good as this was, he took it up a few notches on Diary of a Madman. So Over the Mountain. That was the first track. Then you go into Flying High Again, which has some incredible bass work originally from Bob Daisley, and on here from Rudy Sarzo. Or actually, no, not Rudy Sarzo. It was Robert Trujillo. It's all very confusing with all these different lineups and who did what and when. But suffice to say that the original was Bob Daisley. A brilliant bassist. I think he almost had like a fretless bass on that song. Slow with, once again, incredible guitar work. Each track on here, the guitar work is amazing. So that was Flying High Again. Then you had my favorite track on this album, You Can't Kill Rock and Roll. That's a very true statement. Starts off with almost like a little acoustic piece from Randy Rhoads. Really nice and melodic. And then it just punches in and Ozzy just lets rip. I must say, Ozzy's vocals on this and the debut are spot on. I mean, as much as he's an entertainer, and he himself has said, I'm not a vocalist, on these two albums, he shines. So that was You Can't Kill Rock and Roll. Then we had the track called Believer, another great track. Excellent drumming again from Lee Kerslake. Then we had Little Dolls. That's another heavy track. I think that was the beginning of side 2 originally on the vinyl. Also starts off with a great drum piece from Lee Kerslake. You know, a lot of guys forget what an excellent drummer he was, even back in the days with Uriah Heep. If you watch those early footage of Uriah Heep with him and Gary Thane together, great stuff. Then there's a track called Tonight. And then it's S-A-T-O or Sato. And then the final track, the crowning track on this album, is the title track, Diary of a Madman. Starts off very slowly, kind of eerie. Also, once again, with like an acoustic piece from Randy Rhoads, beautifully played, lots of melody. And then it just builds and builds, this track, and it gets heavier and heavier. Great songwriting as well, which is a standout thing on this album. You know, it's not your basic lyrics about I love my baby and my baby drives a fast car, etc. This was interesting stuff. You never really got that with Sabbath either. And although this was a little bit more, these two albums were a bit more accessible, I suppose, than some of the early Sabbath stuff that featured Ozzy, it was still fairly heavy. And it made a great statement, a great 1-2 punch with a debut and Diary of a Madman. Although I have to say, this is still my favorite Diary of a Madman, the original recording. As I said, I need to get that 30th anniversary because they've put back the original bass and drums. To me, that was just wrong. I mean, you don't have to do that. You can have issues, but sort it out. You don't have to take as if those guys never played. Yeah, anyway, that's rock and roll, eh? So there we go. Ozzy Osbourne, the Prince of Darkness, as he's otherwise known. And for me, his top 2 albums, followed by No More Tears. Recently, his stuff, I don't know, for me, he's lost his way. And I mean, the guy's health is not that great these days. So how much longer he's going to be doing it, who knows. Apparently, there is a new album coming out at some stage, so we'll see. I think he's got a whole bunch of guest guitarists, including Tony Iommi, and I think Zach Wilde's also on there. So that's it, guys. Have a great week. Look after yourselves. Give me a like down below, thumbs up, whatever. Subscribe if you haven't. I know I sound like a stuck record. And I'll catch you guys again soon for another Richard's Rock Rambles. Take it easy. Cheers.